Now, when we rediscovered the city, which was kind of late 1900s, what I think happened, we rediscovered the city as a collection of buildings. So we went in really tough on the architects. We said, you know, that if you have enough good buildings, you'll have a good city. No, you won't. Sorry, you just won't do that. As I said, architecture time frame, city time frame, two entirely different things. And then we embody that in the planning system. We are going to control those buildings, we're going to control that one and that one. And we said about removing and calming cars, which is fine. But see, what we did, we said, okay, corners, God, corners are important. So every corner, I mean, if you go to Sydney, every corner is maybe the corner of a laneway, it's a corner of everything, it's got turrets and flagpoles and heaven only knows what. In actual fact, it was about, the city should be about what is the importance of the corner as the plan, as the space. Some of those buildings, and the buildings need to reflect that. But it isn't about the buildings as separate entities. Okay, now what's happening in New Zealand? New Zealand planning process, pretty much not spatially based. This is no different from Australia, so I'm not getting, you know, I'm not trying to be thingy what's it here, you know, come across and say we do it better over there. So it is about this. It says the only thing that makes any of those buildings different is if you happen to amalgamate a site. So of course this is going to be boring. If you built to every district plan in New Zealand, you are going to end up with the worst city imaginable. So that's a bit of a that should be a wake-up call, you know? Something's wrong here. So it stipulates a zoning and generic site controls. Now, it doesn't mean, I'm not saying for one moment, every building's got to be different, not in a million miles. But what I am saying is that you need to think about what are the important corners, what are the runs of buildings, what does the subdivision pattern, which is critical, particularly for infill, and if you want to see what not to do, I can show you some examples that are horrendous. We have to start thinking about the collective three-dimensional outcome. Now, here we are, what's happening in New Zealand? It's a bit strange because what did happen, I think, is it meant that to some degree the architects got into bed with the planners. Now they might have had a different reason, you know, for getting into bed with the planners, but neither groups, I think, have really understood the importance of space. Now it's a bit hard in today's technology, very hard, because most people won't realise that this is an old set square. And I thought, how do I represent an architect? Now everybody's got a computer, you know, it's ruined it. Anyway, so they got into bed with the architects, and that happened to in Australia as well, and happened in lots of places. Now, but then what's happened in New Zealand is the lawyers have really got into bed with the architects and planners. And somebody said New Zealand had more lawyers per number of people any country in the world. That is probably true, and I know where most of them are. They're in the planning system. Now, my view is if we are going to get lawyers out of the planning system, we have to give them something else to do, and I'm thinking digital wills. I heard that on the BBC. Place to go. Okay, so, you know, if we look, I was looking at a book, one of my books on Barcelona, one of my colleagues said to me, Jane, she said, have you looked at the back of that, who was involved in all those projects and what they were? And I said, no, I haven't really. She said, you realise there was the only lawyers that were involved in this whole book of projects were the ones that did the amalgamation of the sites or the acquisition of the sites. So, you know, there's a hell of a lot of money going on legal arguing. Somebody was telling me the other day that they had to argue whether something was urban or not urban. I mean, we have known what's urban and not urban for 5,000 years. So, anyway, that's an issue. So what's different? If we start designing space, what does it mean? First of all, it does mean scale. We have to, so the super city is a good idea because at least we will start thinking as a total. And the other thing, of course, is I don't want to offend any councillors, but democracy is really bad for cities. Very short time frame. You can't get out there with the D9s, you know, the people will say, don't run over me. And but cities are about really, really long term. And I often say that consider future generations. If I had to get the Opera House built now, or even when it was being built, you should have seen the letters in the paper. Why are we putting wind silos on Sydney Harbour? You know, looks like an elephant. You know, that was 1960 something. If we'd never get the Sydney Harbour Bridge in, we'd never get the heavy railing. So we've really got to be careful about what in planning is about the future generations and what is about current generations, particularly, of course, with our private property laws. So we need strategic interventions into the city, all that are design projects. So you don't go into your big bowl of, you know, I've got a whole lot of generic controls here, maybe they work, maybe they don't work, half the time they don't work. So you consider the projects as interventions into the city, as design projects. You'll need strategic designs relating to scale and precinct designs. In Manukau, we've had to drop down to precinct design. We will have to because we don't know exactly the long term. You need to establish the desired three-dimensional outcomes and they inform your controls, not the other way around. Not all sites in the same zone will have the same capacity or necessarily the same value. They don't now, but people don't quite actually realise that. Corner sites will always have the ability for more capacity. And everything must be drawn. You cannot understand the city from writing. I don't care how much you write about it. I mean, you can read novels about the city, and yes, it's wonderful. They can evoke all kinds of wonderful things. But to understand the city as a design intervention, you have to be able to draw. So I have to revise the RMA. It needs a bit, you know, it's too much about protecting the cows and involving everybody from the Chatham Islands to the top of Whangarei. So limit lawyers, find another use for them, and consider future generations. Now, I've only got a few minutes, haven't I? Okay, Manukau, what we're trying to do at Manukau is to practice what we preach about doing all these layers of planning, analysis, etc. Now, a lot of things, because the new urbanists will do a lot of layers as well, but quite often they tend to drop down then into the principles rather than into understanding the nature of the place. So that is the kind of work that we're doing. Here we're setting up these, I know they don't respect ownership patterns at the moment, but it's fine to set a framework of saying, this is fine-grained here. And this will try and link AUT campus up here, links the city north. Buildings don't follow the alignment of the street. Now that is a fundamental difference from what you would normally expect in a city like downtown Auckland. And that is because the streets out there are designed for cars. The only reason that goes like that is because of the cars. They're all designed for cars and sweeping curves. Human beings, hate to tell you this, see in straight lines. So if you actually lined a street pattern like this with all the curves with 8-storey buildings, you would be looking into the side of the building all the time. So that is a fundamental difference from perhaps anything I'd ever worked on before. And not a lot of work has been done on how you translate a 1970s type of city into a compact urban form. Solo Morales in Spain's probably done most, but that is what we're trying to do out there. And you need to be accurate and you need to have sections. We've got all the documents if anybody's interested in the suite of documents. Then we drop down to the public domain. Then we look in more detail at how you actually might consider site works. So there's a whole range of scales happening out there. If you don't have this first one, you've got no idea when somebody comes in with a building here, unless you actually know where the whole city is going, you don't know what kind of advice to be giving these people, to be giving to those people. And I know in my own life, every time I've made a wrong decision, it was because I didn't make a strategic decision. And there's a building now sitting out at the airport, and I go past it every time and I think, Jane, you said the wrong thing. And that was because I didn't look at the context. But interesting, and there wasn't a big picture, but they're getting one.